In 1804, Napoleon took the crown of France in his hands. Then he placed it on his own head before the Pope and the rulers of Europe. Only 17 years later, he lay dying alone on a remote island. He was no longer an emperor. Not one soldier remained under his command, and the Europe he had dominated was thousands of miles away. How did a poor young Corsican conquer most of the continent? And how did his greatest victories become the road to his destruction? The story began on August 15, 1769. Napoleon was born in Ajaccio on the island of Corsica. The map shows Corsica between France and Italy. The island had become French only 1 year before his birth. Many of its people still resisted French rule. Napoleon grew up in a family of minor nobles with limited wealth. His father, Carlo, was a lawyer and politician. His mother, Letizia, was a strict woman accustomed to protecting her family through unrest. From childhood, Napoleon heard stories of Corsican resistance. He therefore did not consider himself entirely French. At 9, he left Corsica for mainland France. First, he had to improve his French. Then he entered the military school at Brienne on a royal scholarship. He was smaller than some classmates, and he spoke with a pronounced Corsican accent. Some students treated him as a poor outsider from a distant island. He withdrew from them and turned to books. He read history, geography, and the lives of ancient commanders. His talent for mathematics led him into the artillery. In 1785, he graduated as an officer at 16. 4 years later, the French Revolution erupted. The monarchy that had funded his education collapsed. The army opened to talent, not only great family names. That chaos became Napoleon's first opportunity. In 1793, French forces besieged the coastal city of Toulon. The map shows Toulon and its harbor on the Mediterranean coast. British troops and their allies controlled the port. Napoleon proposed capturing the heights that protected their ships. His cannon brought the enemy fleet under fire. The British were forced to abandon Toulon. At 24, Napoleon became a general. 2 years later, the government faced a royalist uprising in Paris. Napoleon used artillery against the insurgents in the capital's streets. He saved the government by force, and his name became associated with order and resolve. In 1796, he took command of the French army in Italy. He found his soldiers hungry, exhausted, and poorly equipped. But he moved them faster than his enemies expected. He separated the Austrian and Italian armies. Then he defeated them in battle after battle. The map shows his advance across northern Italy toward Austrian territory. He returned to France as a celebrated hero, but he did not leave his fame to chance. He used newspapers and bulletins to build the image of an invincible commander. In 1798, he sailed for Egypt with his army. His aim was to strike British interests. He also hoped to threaten the route to India. The map shows the French fleet crossing the Mediterranean to Alexandria. The French defeated the Mamluks at the Battle of the Pyramids. Napoleon then entered Cairo, but Admiral Horatio Nelson destroyed most of the French fleet at the Battle of the Nile. Napoleon's army was cut off from Europe. The Egyptians resisted the new occupation. French forces violently suppressed the Cairo revolt. Napoleon then advanced into the Levant. The map traces his route from Egypt through Jaffa to Acre. His advance stopped before Acre's walls, and plague spread through his army. Scientists and engineers accompanied the campaign to study Egypt's antiquities and nature. But their scientific work unfolded within a colonial invasion. When Napoleon learned of France's crisis, he abandoned his army in Egypt. Then he secretly returned home. In November 1799, he joined the coup of 18 Brumaire. The coup overthrew the weak Directory. Napoleon became first consul. France was still called a republic, but real power now belonged to him. He reorganized government and taxation. He founded the Bank of France, and he reformed education. He also reached a settlement with the Catholic Church. In 1804, he introduced the French Civil Code. The code established legal equality among men. It protected private property, and it later influenced laws across the world. But it strengthened the authority of fathers and husbands. It also severely restricted women's rights. In politics, Napoleon censored the press. He used the police to monitor opponents. In the colonies, his government restored slavery and the slave trade in 1802. It reversed one of the Revolution's most important decisions. On December 2, 1804, Napoleon entered Notre Dame Cathedral. There, he was crowned Emperor of the French. The son of the Revolution had created a new ruling dynasty. In 1805, he faced Russia and Austria at Austerlitz. He deceived his enemies into attacking an apparently weak position. Then he shattered their armies in his most famous victory. But the sea remained beyond his control. At Trafalgar, Britain destroyed the French and Spanish fleets. British warships remained masters of the seas. On land, Napoleon continued expanding his empire. He placed relatives on thrones across Europe. But every victory created new enemies, and every conquest demanded soldiers and taxes. In 1808, he made his brother Joseph king of Spain. Popular resistance and brutal guerrilla warfare erupted. French troops sometimes answered with bloody repression against civilians. Spain became a wound that drained the empire. In his private life, Napoleon married Josephine. He loved her, but she gave him no heir. He divorced her in 1809. Then he married Marie-Louise, daughter of the Austrian emperor. In 1811, she gave birth to his son. His dynasty seemed destined to endure. But disaster began in 1812. Napoleon led an enormous army into Russia. The map shows the Grande Armée advancing across Eastern Europe toward Moscow. The Russians withdrew before him. They destroyed supplies the French might use. The armies finally met in the bloody Battle of Borodino. Napoleon reached Moscow, but he found much of the city burning. He waited for a peace offer that never came. His army began its retreat west. Hunger, disease, and Russian attacks tore through it. Then freezing weather deepened the catastrophe. Winter did not destroy the army alone. Distance, failed logistics, combat, disease, and cold destroyed it together. Only a fraction of the Grande Armée returned. The legend of an invincible Napoleon was broken. His enemies united again. They defeated him at Leipzig in 1813. The following year, Allied armies entered Paris. Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to Elba off the Italian coast. The map shows tiny Elba near France and Italy. He kept the title of emperor over the island's small population, but he did not remain there long. He escaped Elba in less than a year. Then he landed in southern France with a small band of men. The government sent soldiers to arrest him. Instead of firing, those soldiers joined him. Napoleon reached Paris without a major battle. King Louis XVI fled the capital. The period known as the 100 Days had begun. The European powers moved quickly to stop him. On June 18, 1815, the Battle of Waterloo began. The map shows Waterloo in present-day Belgium. Napoleon faced the army of the Duke of Wellington. The Allied lines held against French attacks. Then Prussian reinforcements reached the battlefield. The balance turned decisively against Napoleon. His army collapsed by evening. He returned to Paris defeated. Then he abdicated for a second time. Napoleon surrendered to the British. Perhaps he expected asylum or treatment worthy of a former emperor. But Britain decided to remove him from Europe forever. It sent him to the remote island of Saint Helena. The map shows the island between Africa and South America. Escape was almost impossible. Napoleon lived under guard at Longwood House. He read extensively and dictated his memories to his companions. He retold his life as he wanted the world to remember it. He presented himself as the revolution's heir. He also portrayed himself as a victim of Europe's monarchs. But his health began to fail. He suffered severe abdominal pain. Then he weakened day by day. On May 5, 1821, Napoleon died. He was 51 years old. Doctors and historians consider stomach cancer the most likely cause. Theories that he was poisoned remain unproven. In 1840, his remains returned to France. They were later entombed at Les Invalides in Paris. Napoleon left behind a more centralized state. He left laws and institutions that survived his fall. But he also left a continent exhausted by war, and millions of people had paid for his ambition. He also left a colonial legacy that cannot be ignored. Some remember a military genius who carried revolutionary ideas across Europe. Others see an authoritarian ruler who built his glory on battlefields. The truth is that Napoleon contained both men. He was a reformer who demolished old systems, and a conqueror who built his own order through force. He began as a Corsican child searching for a place within France. He ended as a defeated emperor whose legacy Europe still debates today.